Good morning and welcome to Sunday. I'm so glad to be here and I'm so glad that you are too. So, we're going to jump right in. I will probably share a little bit of an update as we get going, but I have had some really great conversations with people this week. And so it fit right in with actually the topic that I had written down weeks ago that I knew I would share today. Just divinely inspired, several months ago when I first started this series, originally entitled How to Live a Rich Life. Now really it's more in my mind, how to live your best life. And ultimately at the end of the day, without any of the fancy wording, it's how you can live the life you want to be living. And so many people are not living the life they want to be living. And what I think they think they're doing is they're in this transition, right? And of all the things that I think of myself as, I definitely think of myself as a transition expert. It's something I've now done in my own life. I am not even sure how many times. So many times. I mean, as a child, we moved around a lot. My dad was a pastor, and we moved around every 3 to 4 years, roughly, up until I got into high school. And so transition has been a part of my core lifestyle right from the beginning, very vividly, right? Transition is a part of all of our lives right from the beginning. Another way of thinking about transition is like change, right? And being really good at change. And yet there is something very different if you move around early on in childhood, whether it's from just house to house in different places in the one area, town, city, or you're moving all over the country or all over the world. And for sure, people who have, whose family is in the church, a pastor or missionary or military, right? So I had a lot of commonalities with folks with kids who had military parents. But all of that being said, it's a very clear transition and a very hard transition for most young people. I have to say for myself, there was a lot of excitement after I went through the hardship of the move, but each move was very hard for me specifically. I felt this feeling of like being, feeling really settled and really connected where I was, and then being uprooted and forced to start all over again. And so as a child, it was very difficult. It was also exciting, right? And I think it's important, I just wanted to highlight, because that was some of what came up in these conversations this week, is as humans, we're very complex. And so we can hold multiple feelings about any circumstance. And I just want you to know that, because it's easy to think that you should just be thinking about something one way, or it's easy to get yourself confused about how you feel about something when you're both loving it and hating it at the same time. Okay, so I want you to know, you could be experiencing a whole range of emotions about a particular circumstance in your life, about a particular past, future, doesn't matter. So it's totally normal. So in my childhood, there was both a great upset and hurt and frustration around moving around and having all these transitions, but also an excitement at the same time. Right? Meeting new people, visiting different places. We lived in Alaska for 3 years, so not that many people do that, right? Shout out to my friend Mackenzie from Alaska. So it's both, right? And what I know for sure is transitions have an impact on the way we see ourselves and the way we see the world. And everyone goes through them. So what I want to look at this morning is what I wrote here for the title is Is imposter syndrome affecting what you want? Is it holding you back, essentially? And what I would offer is it's always holding us back in some area of our life. And the way that I think about imposter syndrome, which I'll just define for us here as we're getting started, it's this sense of feeling like you're a fraud, or feeling like you're a fake, or you're not really there yet, or you're doing something that you don't really feel qualified to do. And so what I would offer to you is we're always doing something that we don't feel fully qualified to do in our lives. If you're here and you're watching me, you fit the category. I'm just going to say that. And on the off chance that you don't, right? For people who are motivated, ambitious, who like want to get the most out of life, who are typically people that work really hard, that are driven, that are high achieving, and just ultimately they want to get the most out of life. So you're always going to find yourself in this space of feeling like you're not fully qualified, and it's okay. And that's really one of the biggest learnings that I've had over my lifetime, and definitely in the last 5 to 10 years, has been this awareness that we'll always feel not fully qualified. And then once we hit that point where we're like, wait a minute, I'm totally qualified to be doing this, then you're like, okay, what's next? Again, if you're that type of person, which I'm just going to assume that you are, then you're going to hit that plateau and you're going to be like, okay, what's next? And you're not really just going to feel comfortable and settled in feeling like you're now fully qualified. You've like arrived, we'll say, right? You really get it, because the challenge gets removed when you get there. So if you're a highly driven, excited person, right? And if you don't feel that way right now, let me just say, I was there about 7 years ago, 7 years ago, where I was like not happy about life and not looking forward to the future. And I was not like waking up thinking this is my best life. So I just want you to know, if you're in that space, but your normal vibe, your typical essence is, I want to live really well. I want to make the most of this life. I want to feel alive, right? And what my clients, the people that I talk to that I know are like my people, what they say consistently every time is, I know it shouldn't be this hard to live well. I know that what I'm doing and the way that I'm doing things is the harder way. And I know there's better out there for me. I just cannot figure out how to do it. So that's where I come in, right? To fill that gap of helping you figure out how to actually get there, because you already know it's there. And that is such a cool thing to be aware of. Like, you already know it's there. It's available. It's out there ahead of you, right? You can actually probably even see it consistently. I talked to like 2 or 3 people this week who were like, I can see it, but I'm just not there yet. And I don't know how to get there, right? And we have all kinds of ideas. You have all kinds of ideas of like what you think is going to help you get there. And I had all kinds of ideas too that I thought was going to help me get there. And ultimately, I'm going to share certainly more in detail, but what ultimately got there was a radical change in my thinking, a radical change in my worldview, in my paradigms. It required me to do some massive shifting in my mind around how I saw myself and how I viewed the world and what was possible for me, and really challenge a lot of that thinking. So I want you to know it's not like massive changes in your life, especially for those of you who've been following me and you know that like I've done massive changes in my life. That's not required. And I would even offer to you, and I offer this to my clients when I'm working with them one-on-one, it's like, they sometimes will get really nervous, like, oh, I'm really like worried about the changes I'm gonna have to make, or oh, I don't know if I'm ready to like, end this relationship or start a new job or whatever the thing is that they're working on. And I say to them, just reminding them like, hey, nothing actually has to change in your world for you to start feeling really good about who you are. And it's the most liberating awareness to really sink into, which again, if you're trying to think about it logically, right? You're not going to get to the place where you need to get to because you're thinking with your own current thoughts right now. So, bigger picture, right? It's like you have an idea of where you want to get to, but in order for you to actually get to that place and for you to feel this new way, it is going to require a different way of thinking, a different way of seeing in order for you to make that happen. And ultimately, the reason why you look around in the world right now and you see so many people unhappy, fearful, uncertain about the future, holding on to the past in various different ways is because they are still using their current thought process, right? They're still operating off of the current rules, and we'll just say rules, right? Standards of living, the way that you conceptualize how life works, which we all have. Like whether or not you think you have it, you do. It's as sure as gravity that you have your own set of rules, guidelines for how life should be lived. And those are always the thing that keeps us from living in a different way. Like always. Which again is so liberating to be like, oh, it's actually all me. Ultimately, it's all of the ways in which I think about things, all of the shoulds, have tos, musts, this is how it is, this is like the path that I have to go down, I have to go do this. That's it right there, right? And so while it is just that simple, it's also like very complex because we as humans are very complex, right? Not like in a weird way and not in a mysterious way, just in a practical way, we are very complex. We have the ability to experience the whole range of emotions, and just that in and of itself makes us complex, right? When you think about the plants or even the animals, they're not necessarily, to the best of my knowledge, they're not experiencing a wide range of emotions, right? Their lives are much more cut and dry. Animals are definitely experiencing something that's like emotions, right? I know when we left to go to the coffee shop yesterday morning, and we left one of the dogs here at the house, little Rosie, and she's sitting at the front door looking at us like, where are you guys going? Please don't leave me here. But is that really what she's thinking? Is that really what she's feeling? Probably not. She's probably just thinking like, I really want to go. But we give her a lot more emotions and meaning to what's going on, right? Again, because that is what we are as humans, complex. In this most beautiful way, we are complex. So all of that leads us to the reasons why you're struggling with imposter syndrome at the level that you are right now is because it's hardwired in you. So if it's hardwired in you, right, what that means is it's something that you learned early on in life. I do think about it like it's something that you're born with, essentially, like it has to be. And it's certainly something that's divinely inspired. that we have the ability to feel like an imposter, right? Which really, when you boil down imposter syndrome, you're never gonna guess what word I'm gonna put on this, what label I'm gonna put on this. If you've been following me for a hot minute, you will totally guess. It starts with an S. But generally speaking, I think we can boil things down to one word when we're being held back. When we're not able to create what it is that we desire, there really is one word we can boil it down to. So when you're out there in the world and you're, feeling this sense of like, I can't make it happen, ultimately what we're saying is, I can't figure it out. I'm not good enough to figure it out. And we can ultimately get to like, there's something wrong with me that I can't do it. And so you may not have those thoughts consciously, right? You may not have them consciously, but they are absolutely running in the background, in the unconscious, subconscious part of your mind. Those sentiments are there. And some people that I've met and some people that I've worked with, it's like putting your head in the sand where you're like, I'm just not going to think about that because I can't figure it out, because it's so uncomfortable to think about. It's okay, right? It's a normal defense mechanism. When we can't figure something out as humans, we of course don't want to admit, I can't figure this out. Like, I feel really shameful. I feel really embarrassed, disappointed in myself that I can't figure it out. I can't make it happen. And so what do we want to do? We want to go hide, right? And so I just refer to that as putting your head in the sand. And that's normal, okay? I just want you to like really hear that. It's totally normal. So at the same time, it's not useful. So I do want to give you some things to be able to like pull your head out of the sand and be willing to take a look at it. Because when you're willing to actually look at what's going on and understand it, you can absolutely create what it is that you want to be creating. Whatever that is right now in your own life. Like whether you're wanting more money, or you're wanting to have a transition in your jobs, or you're wanting to do different work, or you're wanting your marriage to be better, or you're not yet in a marriage and you really want one, like whatever it is, it always comes back to this. So being able to shift this perspective around how you see yourself and how you see what's possible, right? We have to actually remove the sentiment of imposter syndrome. So making it just totally normal, like, oh yeah, okay, totally. You're going to feel that way some of the time. And all it means is you're now engaging in something, and maybe you've been here for a while, but you're in a space where you don't feel the confidence that you want to feel in what you're doing. So it means there's more work to do for you to feel fully confident in doing it. And that's okay. It's called practice. It's called removing more self-judgment. It's called bringing in more self-acceptance. It's acquiring new skills, all of the things. Okay, so big picture, I just want to take you back real quick here, right? In childhood, giving you my best stuff here, so I'm keeping track on some of my notes. It's really being able to recognize that in childhood, this is the thing that helped me the most. We are actually taught to fit in. Okay? So when you think back to childhood, very few people were taught to stand out. Okay? And if you can think of someone in your, schooling years that stood out, like genuinely stood out, did they like who they were, right? Like really look and be like, did they really like who they were? And you know the signs of someone who likes themselves. So you can question, did they really like who they were? Did they seem genuine? Were they truly happy? Sometimes the person who like is making everyone laugh, right? Or who's like really outgoing and gregarious gets labeled as someone who stands out, someone who's really confident, someone who feels really good about themselves, someone who's like not afraid to be seen. But are they really? Is that really true, right? Or is that just another defense mechanism that they've learned for how to not take a look at those parts of themselves that feel uncomfortable, that feel unclear, right? Those places where they feel insecure. And they're just using that kind of persona to cover it up. So we're literally taught, again, most people, not everyone. And if you had the privilege of going to like Montessori school and your parents were all Montessori type people and really focused on helping you feel free and independent and growing you as your own unique human, that's fucking awesome. Please drop it in the comments or reach out to me. I love to speak with people like that who've had that journey, had that experience. And even that person, right, is still going to feel some level of imposter syndrome. Again, because it's hardwired in us to feel that way. Every time we get to a new chapter of our lives, every time we're looking to upgrade who we currently are and what we're currently doing in the world. In other words, our standards of living. Every time we want to upgrade, we're going to feel some level of this imposter syndrome. So for the majority of us, you went to public school or a large school, even if it was private, and essentially, right, what the message that gets communicated in schooling that gets started with our parents, right? And those first few years of life, because our parents want us to fit in. Our parents want us to feel good about who we are. Our parents don't want us to be getting made fun of, right? Or being seen as different. And so there's a lot of work that goes into helping you learn how to fit in, learning the skills of how to fit in. It's really mind-blowing when you really allow yourself to look at it this way and to see the benefit of looking at it this way, right? Because it explains this feeling that you've been having probably forever, and it allows everything to make sense. Like if you're right now trying to change directions in your life, you're trying to make a transition, or you're looking to stand out in your business, right? Whether you're working for someone or you're working for yourself. If you're working for yourself, obviously, there's a degree of you trying to differentiate, whether it's just differentiating your business in the market or it's truly you looking to differentiate from other people that are doing the thing you're doing, or you're in a business and you're looking to stand out. We're always once you get to a certain point, and I would make the argument literally, we're always trying to stand out because we want to be seen as special, as unique, while at the same time dealing with this hardwired conditioning of trying to fit in, right? So it can feel like you're in conflict with yourself, where you're like working really hard to fit in, but at the same time, you really want to stand out. Right? So like at a business, whether you're in corporate or your agency work, you're a mental health professional, like wherever you are, whatever journey you're in for profession, we want to stand out, right? Because we want to be doing a good job and we want to get recognized for doing a good job. And so of course you're still looking to stand out even in that setting. So you're in this sort of internal conflict of wanting to stand out, but also wanting to fit in. And so it can leave you feeling like wanting something, but doing another thing. And that's another sign that you're in this place. And if you've been in that place for a while, where you're like hearing yourself saying, I want to be doing this, but then you see yourself do something else, something different than what you're saying you truly want, well, then you know you're stuck in this very common pattern of feeling like you're an imposter and not being able to get out of it, right? And ultimately, that's being stuck in a place where you're not allowing yourself to really be who you know you're meant to be, to really go after the things that you truly want in your life. And there are very deep, specific reasons that that's happening. It isn't just that you need to work harder or that you need to put yourself out there even though it feels really uncomfortable. that only works for so long. Like what I'll say is it's not sustainable over time. And that's how I really got invested in doing this work for myself and now offering this work to help other people, is because I realized that working really hard or forcing yourself to get out there is not sustainable over time. The thing that is sustainable over time is actually training and conditioning and learning how to be you, how to be comfortable doing the things you want to be doing, how to actually feel that level of confidence and comfortability in your own skin to stand out, to be visible, to be uniquely different, to be uniquely you, right? Now, for those of you that have been following me for a hot minute, you have noticed me shift over time. And I mean, if you looked at videos of me 6 months ago, you'll see I'm radically different today, even than I was 6 months ago, let alone a year, 5 years, 10 years ago, right? You can look back over my entire existence on social media and see my evolutions, my upgrades. Okay, and if you don't see that in yourself, well, then you know this is the answer. Like, this is why. Because you've gotten stuck and you're literally preventing yourself from upgrading, from evolving, from shifting into another version of you, to be in alignment with who you're truly meant to be. So if you have a passion, a love, right? I see this the most clearly in the work that people do, where I'll be in conversations with people and I'll be like, do you really want to be doing what you're doing right now? Or even yesterday, I was in conversation with someone and they told me something that they really thought they were going to start working their way to be doing this new thing. And I was like, but why do you want to do that? Right? And it was literally motivated by a reason that is like, not a divinely inspired reason. And I was like, that's not going to take you it's not going to take you in the direction of you being fulfilled and happy. That is going to take you in the direction of you being dictated by shame, trying to prove to everyone else this, that, or the other thing, trying to like teach people how to be more like fair and, appropriate in the world. That isn't going to bring you fulfillment and happiness. So like even inside of a lot of social justice movements, there's a motivation of wanting to do that work, which I was also in that work. I don't think of myself in that space exactly anymore. I'm definitely still doing that, but I don't see myself in that space anymore because I felt like in that space, I was trying to prove to people how they should be. And at the end of the day, that doesn't work. It doesn't feel good. I don't want other people proving to me how I should be. In fact, that's literally what I've worked so hard to get away from over the last several years, because that's ultimately what happens to all of us. As we get older and we go through all the circumstances of life, like we just find ourselves in these places where we're like, I am like not happy. But the reason for that is because you've been chasing something that isn't the thing you really want. Okay, so this comes up primarily in work and the work that we're doing, because at the same time, we're also constantly doing this as it relates to money and financial security. And so when we're prioritizing our financial security and we're prioritizing working really hard to provide for all the things that we need, we always end up in something we're not really loving. Always. It just literally always happens. And the reason why you then also feel not as excited and not as fulfilled in your love life, in your personal health, in your quote hobbies, you're not feeling overall amazing in your life, is because the way you think about in one area of your life is the way you think in all areas of your life. I know you might have been told that you can think differently in different areas of your life, but it's not true. Like, that's an illusion to think that you can show up and be one person here and then show up and be a totally another person over here. Now, I'm not saying you can't pretend. Of course you can pretend. We can put on all kinds of masks. But at the end of the day, when you pull it back, the foundation is still the same. And if the foundation is still the same, then you are still the same. And the way in which you do things is still the same. You're just doing them with a mask on and different masks in each of the areas, but it's still you doing things the same way. So for you to get really clear and ultimately living your best life, doing the things you really want to be doing, making the money you really want to be making so that you can afford the things you really want in your life, whatever that is, right? It's going to require some massive shifting. And when I say massive, I only mean massive because you can't keep thinking the same thoughts of, I got to work really hard. I just got to be more visible. I just got to do more videos. I just got to put out more content. I just got to connect, network with a bunch more people. None of that is actually going to lead to you being happy, you feeling really good about your business, about the money you're making. You're just going to have more business, have more money, be more connected to more people, and still feel the same way internally. That's just how it works. So I say massive thinking only because you're going to learn to think differently, right? And so when you're learning to live a new way, it's true. You're literally learning to live a new way. But it doesn't mean anything in your life actually has to change. Only the things that you want to change have to change. Well, they don't even have to change, but think about it like the things that you actually want to change, those are the things that will change. Okay, so to wrap us up here, let's spend a few minutes talking about what to do. Now that you know where imposter syndrome comes from and why it's there and it's totally normal, cool, what to do, right? What to do with it. So what to do with it. Getting really clear with what you actually want is always the first step. Now, this is literally what I spend 6 months at a time helping people with. And so I say that to tell you it's not easy. I was at a lovely group earlier this week and we were having this conversation about even people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. One of the gentlemen was in his 50s and he was sharing, I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. And it's like, listen, yes, I hear you. If that's your answer, I don't really know what I want, okay, I hear you. And what I want to offer to you is we all actually do know what we want. It's in us, right? You're not going to find what you want outside of you, right? I used to go around, this has now been several years ago, but I used to go around to all kinds of my friends, my closest friends, the people who knew me well, and I would be like, what do you think I should do? Should I do this or should I do that? And what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? Trying to get them to help me figure out what I wanted. It really makes me laugh now. It's full on funny, right? And I was a professional therapist and I was damn good at my job. And I had been promoted many times over and I was leading my own team. So I was very competent. And yet this was the strategy. This is what gets taught to most of us. I mean, even now when I go into various professional groups online, there are all kinds of these very professional people in all walks of life asking for help and essentially asking the other people in these groups to tell them what they should be doing. So all of that to bring us back to getting really clear on what it is that you want requires you to be willing to actually claim that you want something, right? So instead of just keeping it super broad and specific, like I want to be happy, which every person on the planet wants, and doesn't really mean anything tangibly, you have to be willing to get tangible. You have to be willing, you must get tangible in what you want, right? Detailed, specific in what it is that you actually want. And that's literally all it takes, is getting detailed and specific about what it is that you want right now. You're not committing to what you want forever. You're just committing to something that you want right now. And it can always change. So for those of you that are like freaked out by commitment, or you're like super hesitant to commit to anything, listen, this is literally the path to having exactly what you want. Like, I'm literally telling you exactly how to get it. And the first step is being willing to commit to wanting something. Okay? So, again, most of us just want things to be a little bit better because that's what we've been trained to believe. And most of us have heard probably a bazillion times, you should be grateful for what you have right now. You should be grateful for what you have going on in your life right now. You should be happy, right? And you're like, yeah, but I don't feel that way. Or you're like, yeah, but I still feel like there's more. Listen, this is just what people have told you. It isn't true. And if it doesn't feel good for you, then you also know it's just not true. Now, I'm not saying if it feels uncomfortable, because that's different. But if it doesn't feel in alignment for you, then it's just not true. And that's the easiest way to always know. So you have to, in order to like really get inspired by your own vision, you have to be willing. I keep saying you have to, and I fucking hate that phrase. So what I'm going to say instead is you must, if you want to be liberated and free and doing what you really desire, then you must be willing to commit to wanting something and get specific about it. And you are most likely going to need to think really big and way outside of your comfort zone in order for you to get inspired enough to actually get excited about it, right? So like this week I was talking to a handful of different people and I was like asking them, well, what is it that you really want? And the answers that they were giving to me were very flat, right? It was like, well, it'd be really nice if I was making X amount of money, and if I could do this in my business, and if, this could happen in my love life, but it was like flat. And so then when I like dig in deeper and I'm like, let's see if we can like suspend reality completely, right? And go into like pretend land where like literally there's rainbows and unicorns everywhere and magic genies who are just handing out exactly what you want. Challenge yourself to go to that place, because we've got to get an inspiring vision in order for you to get really like excited and serious and be willing to invest financially and with your time and effort into creating what it is you're telling me that you want. And right now, you're very flat. So you need to be willing to get outside of your comfort zone, thinking about what it is that you're really wanting in your life. Going really big, writing it down, being willing to commit and being like, this is what I want. I would feel like amazing if I was making this much money and I was doing this kind of work and I was like doing this in my travels and in my personal life and in my love life and my body and my nutrition and my health. Boom, 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 boom. And when you allow yourself that freedom, it will come up and out of you and you'll be like, whoa. So much fun to actually discover that. I love that part of the work that I get to do with people, is actually helping them to access it, because for most people, that is on lockdown. So do not be discouraged if you're like, yes, sir, I've done it. I heard you. I used all these questions that you gave and I, really tried and it's still not coming out of me. Listen, it's totally normal. You're just on lockdown. You've had enough things happen, or very specific traumatic type of things happen, and you feel hurt and you're not willing to dream big. It's totally okay. That's why I'm here. This is literally what I do to help people, is I help you get free. I help you remove those barriers, those blocks that are currently there, keeping you from even being able to access what it is you really want, and really getting specific on your vision. So that's number 2, which is removing the blocks, removing what's blocking you right now from having what you want. Okay, and the short answer here is the thing that's blocking you from having what you truly want is always something that's going on with you. It's not really ever about someone else, even if it seems like it at first. And so we track that down, right? When we do the work together, I'm very gentle with you to like really uncover that awareness, and very directly going to help you own and see where you can actually take responsibility for the reason you don't yet have what you truly want. Because if it's someone else, ultimately, if it's like we just leave it with someone else, whoever that someone else is, right? Your parents, your spouse, your kids, your boss, if we leave it on them for why you don't have what you want, like that sucks. And at the end of the day, it's also just simply not true. Every one of us has free will and the capabilities and abilities to actually create what it is that we desire. So you have to remove the block, right? It's always fear and it's always shame. That's like the veil that's over you right now. So if you're really wanting, I don't know why this just came to me, but if you're really wanting to be pregnant and or you're really wanting kids, whoever that's for, there's a block that's over you right now that's literally keeping you from creating children. If that's what your heart desires, it's completely available for you. And so when we have this veil over our eyes, like we're literally unable to see how to, right? And that's what everybody wants to know is, how do I do it? How do I get it? How do I make it happen? Everybody, anytime I talk to somebody over the 25 years of working with people and they're like, but I want this. And I'm like, okay, cool. So like, how would that happen? And the answer for the thing that they want that they can't figure out is always, I don't know. So there's always a block, and it's internal block. And again, this is really good news that it's internal, because you then have the power to change it. Okay, so I won't dwell on that one because I talk all about that in all my content. So if you want more content, you're looking for more information on that, the best thing by far for you to do is schedule a call to meet with me, and we will break it down specific for just you. And you can also drop it in the comments or send me a DM to say, hey, where's more of that content? Like literally scroll through all my videos. It's always leading back to this. Because again, it is the thing that you need the most. So the third one is be willing to follow a new process. Okay. And this one, honestly, I think this one can feel the most scary. It felt the most scary for me when I really started into this journey 5-7 years ago. And I put off doing this kind of work because the idea of living in a new way was so scary. I kind of laugh at it now because, I mean, anything is only what we've decided it's going to be, right? And so like I had worked it up in my mind that it was going to be so scary at that time for me, for people to, quote, find out that I was actually not as happy as I thought I should be, right? And not as happy as other people in my life seem to think that I should be as well, because again, I had the house, I had the great job, I was making tons of money, like all these things, right, that are supposed to lead us to being there, right, the arrival point, and it doesn't. That's because literally that's not how we feel good. We don't feel good internally by having a bunch of stuff out here. No, we feel good internally by actually learning how to feel good internally, regardless of what's going on out here, right? Because like, you know, I go back to like the story of Job. There are several different stories I could allude to, but just because my background is in church, my mind oftentimes goes to scripture. You think about Job, right? Regardless of whether or not you think it's true, doesn't matter. But you can think of someone in your life who's like lost everything. And so when you think about this idea of like losing everything, that's generally everyone's worst fear, is that we're going to like lose everything. when you strip it all away, why anybody is feeling fearful, it's because you are worried about losing everything. And so at the end of the day, right, if you were to lose everything, which in the story of Job, he basically loses everything. And somehow, right, as the story goes, and literally as you yourself have seen in someone else's life, they go on living. Like they manage to go on. Somehow, right, they find it within themselves. It's not something outside of themselves that they access that allows them to go on. No, it's something in themselves that they access internally that allows them to go on living. And for a lot of people who've, quote, lost everything, they go on living and figure out how to at least feel good again. They may not figure out how to feel amazing, which is totally normal, but they do figure out how to feel some semblance of good, because that is what our minds are always doing, is looking for how to feel good. It's literally how our minds are made. Like every human on the planet has a mind that is seeking to feel good all the time. So again, some of this stuff that you hear me like explaining, it, of course, there's a bigger conversation to have. So like, don't just take literally, you know, be willing to like do more research. Book a call, like schedule a call, shoot me a DM and say, hey, let's talk about that some more. I'm absolutely happy to do that with you. Send me a DM and be like, what did you really mean about that? Because there's always more to understanding, always. And that's ultimately how we grow, right? Is because there is more to understand. Otherwise, we would get really bored with life. So be willing to follow a new process. It just means instead of thinking like, for instance, that you, I don't know, have to do, 1,000 videos on social media before you can really be successful in your business. I hear that a lot in the networking and connecting with people that I do now more in entrepreneur land. There's this like, I gotta be visible, I gotta be out there, I gotta like do all these videos. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, that is one way to do it. And being visible, yes, but you don't have to necessarily do these videos. And let's get more clear on why you think you have to do these videos. So it's not about like radically changing how you're living life. It's always about changing how you're living in your own mind. And so one really good example I can give you that I absolutely help you work out is many people have a running narrative in their minds of negativity. And I'm just going to call it that for simplicity's sake. And so this running negativity that you have in your mind is not useful. Okay, so if it's not useful, it needs to go. So that's one very concrete, tangible example. There are several I could give you for ways that we shift your thinking. But that's a huge one. And that is a huge paradigm shift. It may not feel like it, but like how long has that negative voice been in your head? And or the committee of negative voices. Maybe you don't even just have one negative voice. Maybe you have a whole host of negative voices in your mind. How long has it been there? Right? We're going to actually remove it. We're going to silence it. We're going to deconstruct it and then reconstruct it to be a useful voice, right? However you want to think about it, there's 1,000 different ways people talk about this. I think about it like I used to have a very critical voice inside of my head, and now I don't. And now I have a voice, primarily the voice that I hear. There's the still small voice, right, that I think about as like my divine self, right? It's God within me. It's this part of me that's connected to everything else, right? That's connected to the thing that's out here that people refer to as the higher power, right? So again, whether you call it God, whether you call it universe, like however you think about the divine, we're connected in that way. There's that still small voice, whatever you call it, the still small voice. But then there's also like your own mind, right? And the voice of yourself. And that is the voice now that I hear most of the time. And I'm able to like have really good conversations with myself, right? But there's a running dialogue. Like even as I was preparing for this morning, it's like the old critical voice of me would have been like, oh my gosh, you haven't like advertised enough for this Sunday morning thing, and you haven't like invited enough people, and you haven't figured out how to, create this or the other thing to be able to promote it more. And I would just be rah, 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 towards myself, right? And now I'm like, I love getting on Sunday mornings. What am I going to talk about today? And how do I want to talk about this thing about imposter syndrome? And, I had 3 or 4 different ideas, and I was working through all of them. And I'm like, how do people most need to hear it this morning? The point being, I'm not myself all week or all morning. Instead, I'm like, I'm going to get up and I'm going to do yoga, and I'm going to go for my walk, and I'm going to make my tea, and I love my morning time, and I definitely want to take a shower, and I'm going to find something fun to put on to get on the training this morning, and I'm going to allow myself the freedom and flexibility to change the topic if I feel called and led to change the topic. That's what's going on in my voice, in my head, as I'm getting ready to come and visit with you this morning. For most people, myself included, up until not that long ago, a few years back, I had the negative voice going and going and going. So that isn't useful, and it's not helping you live your best life. It's not helping you create literally the things that you want to create. It is part of the gap here, the critical voice, the you being mean and nasty to yourself and telling yourself all the things you should and shouldn't be doing. That is here. Right? That has to change in order for you to get where you want to be. So, those are the 3 things that you must do in order to get where you want to go, enjoy where you are right now, and be able to enjoy where you want to get to. At any point in your life with anything that's going on. Like those are always the 3 things to helping you remove the sensation of imposter syndrome and the overall fear and shame that you're feeling inside of this concept of not being ready, not being able to figure it out, not being there yet. These are the 3 steps, and these are the 3 steps that I help you with. These are the 3 steps that we take the time to unpack clearly, intentionally, in such a way that it's sustainable over time. And that's ultimately the thing that, I think the reason that this work is so valuable is because if you haven't done this work and you jump into doing other types of work, like you create a program, or you just, whether you're an entrepreneur, you create your own program, or you start charging the value that you really want to be charging, or, whatever it is, you start challenging yourself to make a certain amount of money. If you haven't done this type of work, and I just refer to it as the internal work, where you like literally already feel comfortable in your own skin, if you don't feel comfortable in your own skin, you're not going to be able to sustain over time forcing yourself to charge more money than you actually feel ready to charge, forcing yourself to be visible in the world when you actually do not want to be visible, or over here in, you're working for someone, if you're like forcing yourself to like do this, that, or the other thing to get the promotion so that you can make more money, as for example, you're not going to actually learn how to feel comfortable in your own skin. So that is not sustainable over time. And so when you get to the next thing that you really want in life, you're going to be right back here going, how do I get that? Why can't I make it happen? I'm working so hard and it's like not happening. The reason is because the thing that you used to get what you wanted the last time is force. You used force. And force is rarely, I won't say never because that's not the point here, rarely the way to create what you want in a sustainable way. Actually, I think I would say force is never going to lead you to something sustainable. I don't know. Doesn't matter. It's not important. What I can tell you is the reason why you're not able to recreate a system, a process for getting exactly what you want in your life right now is because chances are you don't know the process that you used the last time. And chances are you probably use some kind of motivation like anxiety, like shame, and those are force or fear, right? And you like forced yourself to work through it and do it anyway. And so here you are now trying to create what it is that you really want in your life, and you can't do it. You aren't able, right? Just like the handful of people I talked to this week, they couldn't figure it out. It's because you haven't learned first how to feel really comfortable, confident, secure in yourself and in your own abilities. And until you work out the heaviness that you have inside of yourself, for those of you that feel a heaviness, which all the people I spoke with this week had a certain sense of heaviness on them, and or until you're feeling really comfortable in your own skin and you clearly have a process for creating what it is that you desire in your own life, then you will always struggle with how to create what you want. So it actually requires learning a process for how to create what you want. All right, you guys, for those of you that want to work with me, I work with people one-on-one. Shoot me a message. Text, Facebook Messenger, drop it in the comments, whatever feels comfortable for you. I will drop the link in here later today. And this is the work that we do. We show up here one-on-one over Zoom, and we get serious about what's going on in your life. We get really super clear on what it is that you want to be creating. We have that as our goal. Like, it's the very clear work that we're doing every week when we talk, and we're always working towards that goal. And usually you start to see like amazing results in about 2 months, and you're like, whoa, I think this is working. And then for sure, by the end of 6 months, you're like, wow, I feel like a radically different human. And again, that's all internal, where you're like, I really feel comfortable in my own skin. I feel really good about who I am. And that happens in less than 6 months. So any questions or hesitations that you're having about, is it worth it? Right? Is it worth the discomfort that you might feel in investing at this level and or putting the time into it? Yes, it is, right? Like, of course it is, because it's sustainable over time and you actually get to feel comfortable in your own skin. You feel confident in what you're able to create in life, and you're able to recreate in your life. You're able to create what you want in other areas of your life. And that is priceless. All right, you guys, as always, thanks so much for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. And I would love to know how our time together has impacted you, what stood out to you. Even if it's just like one thing that you're like, oh yeah, this really hit me. I really get it now. I see it in a new way. Or it's something that you're going to do different this week based on something that we talked about this morning. All right, you guys, between now and when I see you next time, go do that thing you really want to be doing today. And I'll talk to you soon.